Hey, it's CS Joseph of csjoseph.life doing another video lecture and podcast on virtue and vice. We're going to be doing the 9th episode in this series right now. And the type that we're going to be discussing today is the ISTJ, also known as the traditionalist see it through type, past-focused, duty-based, protector, traditionalist, direct responding movement in its interaction style. I would like to state that I have not been around the last couple of days because I just got back to the States, back here in California in good old Silicon Valley. I was in Italy for a while, passed through Switzerland and Germany, and ended up back in Silicon Valley. It was a very long trip, but definitely worth it for sure. Especially when I got off the plane in Italy, it really smelled like Italy, if you know what I mean. You just knew it wasn't Italy. And I got to say, I really like Italian culture. Everyone there is so healthy, and they're a lot happier than Americans, I've noticed. Especially since they start their days so late and they take a very huge break in the middle of the day, and then probably I don't know if they work as much as we do, and the idea that they eat dinner around like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, that's also interesting too. But regardless, I had a great time, and also went hiking and saw some ruins that came from like 1400 BC, which is also pretty dope. I might put up those photos on Instagram in the near future. So anyway, the ISTJ, virtue and vice. This virtue and vice I kind of wrestled with for a while because I really wanted to say like it was wisdom versus ignorance, but that's too far. That's going way too far. And I think ISTJs that are watching this or listening to this would actually agree with me that that's a little too far, because it's not really covering the root of the issue. That may look like symptoms of a problem, but that is not actually like the root issue. So I was able to determine what it was by actually conversing with some ISTJs last year, and kind of just delve into more of the root cause of their vice, and then also like what they aspire to with their virtue. And it really goes back to the fact that they like being they really enjoy, let's say, being that library of Alexandria, like a walking archive, like the walking Wikipedia, where they just collect all of these reference points and they remember everything, right? And all these reference points. And then because of that, because they're keeping track of the narrative, of life or media or anything that, or even in academia, they can kind of see the pattern to it and see how cyclical it is, and they can actually predict future outcomes because of that Library of Alexandria mode. But and that's very attached to their virtue, and their virtue is objectivity, being objective. ISTJs go out of their way to be objective because they realize that everyone else holds them to the standard of objectivity, or at least they perceive that everyone else holds them to the standard of objectivity. It's important, especially like when they're in school and whatnot. Being objective means properly citing their sources, following APA or MLA format, etc. Having the bibliography is absolutely perfect. Making sure that you're talking about reputable sources and whatnot, and making sure you have all your I's dotted and all of your T's crossed, etc. Following that process perfectly to the letter. And they're being very objective about it. And if you need someone who is objective about things, especially following processes, enforcing processes, executing processes, even creating processes, ISTJs are definitely the choice. In my opinion, there's no better accountants than ISTJs. They're extremely capable with numbers. ISTJs are amazing lawyers as well, because they can collect all those reference points from past cases that have set precedents and use that in all of their arguments, saying, okay, well, a judge at one point in time said it was okay for this guy, but now you, Mr. Judge, are not saying it's okay for this guy, so does that make you a hypocrite? Like, ISTJ objectivity is amazing like that. They get so objective on that, and they really go out of their way to remove themselves out of it. The reason is because ISTJs look at life, with an FE trickster, because their lack of social awareness. They actually believe, because of their lack of social awareness, that they can actually be more objective than other people, because they only care about how they feel, and it's all about how they feel about the truth. And then once they've feel good about the truth, they still have to verify the truth with their TI critic, and that causes them to be even more objective. TI critic demands truth. It requires it, similar to how INTJs work. It's the same thing for them, because the ISTJ still has to verify facts after fact after fact after fact after fact. And that allows them to continue to be this amazing, objective human being. And they believe that because they are more objective than other people, that kind of gives them a lot more room to make statements or to have an opinion on certain subjects, more so than other people, because they're like, well, hello, I'm more objective than you, which means my opinion is more valid than yours. Which, let's be honest, is not always the case in reality. But ISTJs, especially young ISTJs, really see themselves that way, especially when they're leveraging their objectivity. And based on that, we can actually see how that goes right into their vice. Because it is possible for an ISTJ to become too objective. And what happens when an ISTJ becomes too objective, where they basically make objectivity their god, as it were, they worship objectivity, that leads into their vice, which is basically the trivial. ISTJs can get insanely trivial, to the point where the information that they're being objective about is basically worthless, not relevant, meaningless. It's like when they're gathering reference points and they're trying to look for all the gems of these reference points. They collect a lot of data in the process that's basically garbage. And then they're expecting, people to be objective about garbage. They're expecting themselves to be objective about garbage, when in reality, garbage doesn't mean anything. I mean, an example for this would be an ISTJ who hasn't really done much with their life, and they get their degree in something that's not really going to help them achieve anything. Like an ISTJ getting an art degree, for example. Not that an ISTJ would get an art degree, but I mean, come on. The science of art is not exactly something with which you could build a career on, right? Like, an ISTJ is super at risk of getting, educated in things that don't really mean much, or won't lead to a good career, or won't lead to a good income, right? So they end up setting themselves back because they just allow their interests to kind of just flow where they go, wherever they're the most comfortable with, or whatever they feel good about, or whatever they're in the mood for, right? The problem is what they're comfortable with and what they're in the mood for doesn't exactly match the objectivity that they're looking for. So they end up becoming this very trivial person, right? It's kind of like the grade school teacher that, they're teaching kids things about subject matters that don't really matter that much, or subject matters that is not really useful to their audience, or to the kids that they're trying to impart knowledge onto. So, I mean, this is always a risk with ISTJs, because again, they're trying to be this library of Alexandria. But I mean, you always go into a library, and you always come to the section where there's romance novels, right? And this is kind of funny, because I've noticed that of all the types, ISTJs are especially ISTJ women, they're like the closet romance novel readers. Let's be fair. And don't worry, other types read romance novels, but sometimes not to the intensity which ISTJs, especially ISTJ women, do sometimes. Reading their romance novels is just an example of something completely trivial or hedonistic that's not really not really beneficial in the long run. It can get that bad. I mean, you're the walking library of Alexandria, and I mean, even you have a book section devoted to romance novels, right? I mean, okay, yeah, that's nice and trivial there, man. I mean, wow. I mean, yeah, the Library of Alexandria is pretty awesome because they literally have everything. See, yeah, that's the problem with ISTJs. They have a hard time focusing on the specific things that matter. The thing is that they're not necessarily aware of what matters because Effie Trickster, that one thing that they pride themselves on, what gives them their objectivity, because they have themselves removed from the social situation, because of that lack of social awareness, that can actually backfire on them and put them in the trivial, right? And that could be a problem. It's important that ISTJs realize that it's actually wiser for them to focus on subjects that are actually inherently or innately or intrinsically more valuable to others, valuable for advocating the right ideas. Like, for example, so ISTJs, they want to become these advocates that are advocating for proper ideas to help the guide the thinking of others, to really find what that core inner philosophy is and try to impart that upon other people for the purpose of social change, because ENFP is their subconscious, right? And people are always trying to become their subconscious. The problem is that ISTJs get stuck in their lazy loop of, oh, I'm not in the mood, or I'm not comfortable with this, I'm only going to do what's comfortable. And I'm like, yeah, sure, I'm sure you'd always be in the mood and always be comfortable reading your romance novels instead of like actually taking the time to read, nonfiction and bettering yourself 100% of the time. Now, it's funny, like, you can literally break this down to reading nonfiction versus fiction, Obviously, nonfiction would be more closer to the virtue, and then fiction would be more closer to the vice. But ISTJs, they get stuck in fiction mode. They get stuck in the trivial for so long because it's what they're comfortable with. It's what they're in the mood to do because, it's entertaining. It's a distraction. They like to distract themselves. They have hedonistic tendencies as a result, right? Or you see those ISTJs who are completely the opposite because they're so all about their virtue and they're constantly reading articles, periodicals, constantly in nonfiction, learning new things, learning new skills, constantly studying, things that are very legitimate, right? I honestly, I can't think of a better example between the fiction, nonfiction, vice versus virtue crux or axis. That's a really good example of how ISTJs can oscillate between the objective versus what's trivial, right? So what do you do? Like, let's say you're in a relationship with an ISTJ and this ISTJ is stuck, in their vice. Here's what you do. First of all, you make them uncomfortable. That's the first thing. You make them uncomfortable. You call into question what they're doing. It's like, okay, well, what are you doing? What are you doing reading romance novels right now? We have these problems in our lives. You need to be helping us solve this problem right now. I need you to be researching these things because that's what's actually useful and that's actually what's relevant to us right now. Instead of you just like laying on the couch all day long, reading romance novels or watching soap operas, for example. Television is another thing. Are they watching something useful on television, or are they watching soap operas, right? I mean, come on, or sitcoms. I'm sorry, ISTJs, when they get trivial, they get so wasteful, right? That's another example of them being trivial. It's all about waste. They're wasting time. They're wasting their intellect. They're wasting the library. It's like there's these book sections in their Library of Alexandria that they have within themselves that are all completely a waste of space, a waste of time. It's not really useful in the long run, right? When those bookshelves should be filled with ideas and authors that are actually useful, that could actually help push society forward, that could push social change for the better, political change even for the better. But do they do that? No. They have to be comfortable and they have to be in the mood and they have to maintain this form of hedonism, which is like super trivial and worthless and waste time and only serves to set humanity back instead of setting humanity forward, which is what the ISTJ is supposed to do with gathering the actual proper reference points and proper materials and proper study, but instead they have to waste their time on the trivial shit, right? So that's the difference. It's important to realize that being objective, versus the trivial is the axis with which their virtue and vice works. So again, to conquer their vice, make them uncomfortable. Make them feel bad. Make them feel that they are a bad person because they are wasting their time. Call into question their worth. Call into question their humanity. Oh, also, while you're at it, go for their TI critic. Ask them, like, okay, well, why do you think it's a good thing for you to be spending so much time on romance novels? Let's look at what percentage of your time you're spending on the trivial versus the objective right now. I mean, you got to make the argument that, okay, yeah, you can have some trivial time every now and then, and that's okay, but the majority of your time better be spent on being objective, right? So let's break down your time. Let's analyze how much time you're spending here or there. Oh, you're rational, though, Mr. ISTJ, and because you're rational, you should be aware of, you should be aware of what is allowing you to, spend your time properly, because they're rational, right? They can see the percentage amount of time that they're spending on objectivity versus the trivial, and then they'll know, they will literally feel bad about themselves if you can show them that they're being more trivial than they are being objective. And that's one of the ways to motivate them to get off their ass and start being objective, to start being useful in that manner, right? So you have to encourage them in this way and show them. And usually you have to inflict pain on them in order to do that. You have to literally keep a record of all of their behaviors and then show them statistically on paper, okay, well, you're spending more time doing these things when you could be spending time doing these things over here, which is more useful to you and everybody else. But no, you want to be in trivial land all day long and be just like a complete total waste. And then ISTJs wonder why they don't get anywhere in life, right? They wonder why they wake up and they're 40 years old, and it's like, well, I've basically been the same for the last 25 years and never gotten outside my comfort zone. Again, what a waste. I don't appreciate this about ISTJs. You guys are supposed to be out there changing the world for the better by collecting all the reference points and predicting the future and then informing people about it and guiding the ideas of others for the sake of positive social change so that you can help eliminate the stupid. But instead of eliminating the stupid, you're too busy wasting time reading fiction instead of studying subjects that actually matter, that actually could be a help to other people. Stop. It's not good. How can you say that you have a moral compass when you're immorally spending your time? Stop doing it, ISTJs. Wake up. Get out of your vice and get in your virtue. We need you. You want to protect the future? You need to help guide the thoughts of others in your life for the sake of having a better tomorrow. I'm sorry, but people are stupid, and one of the few ways that they're going to stop being stupid anymore is if you are studying the right things and getting the right ideas into the right heads. And you're some of the few types that can actually pull this off. That is your virtue. You need to stay objective for the sake of yourself and for those around you. It is critical for your life and other people's lives that are close to you. Be that examiner. Examine the truth. Bring them the truth after you spent so long examining it. That is your purpose. Stay in your virtue. That is what we need. That is what we need as a society. That's what we need as individuals. That is what we need as your friend, if we are your friend. Stay away from the trivial and do everything you can to stay objective. Do not get too objective because that can lead back into the trivial. Stay objective for the sake of yourself and for others. Have self-respect. Put down the romance novel and focus on the truth. Focus on what's relevant. Focus on what's real. Focus on what's needed. Anyway, if you found this lecture or this recording to be useful, helpful, insightful, educational, please subscribe to the channel here on YouTube or on our podcast on iTunes or Google Play. If you have any questions about ISTJs and their virtue and vice, please leave it in the comment section, and I will get to those comments right away. Thank you all for your patience. It was a little bit iffy coming off the plane, but I'm back in business now and going to be recording more videos. We have virtue and vice to finish out, and we have 7 more to go after this for each of the 16 types, and then we're going to be getting into general compatibility. I'm also going to be doing some videos about some requests here very soon from the audience, so we'll have those up as well. And also, my website is being rebuilt right now. Thank you all for being patient with it. Otherwise, it looks like a piece of crap, and I'm very aware that it's a piece of crap. But we're we're getting that figured out. So yeah. Otherwise, the next video is going to be about the ISTP. So I'll see you guys tonight.